Captain Do-hyun Kim looked at the massive alien ships through his bridge window. 200 human vessels floated around him in space near Jupiter. They were Earth's finest ships, but they looked tiny compared to the enemy fleet. "Sir, the coalition ships are moving closer," said his second officer, Lieutenant Soranam. Her voice was calm, but Do-hyun could see the worry in her eyes. The aliens had given Earth a simple choice 3 days ago: surrender or die. Every human on the planet would become slaves, or the aliens would destroy Earth completely. The coalition had done this to hundreds of worlds before. They never lost. Do-hyun touched the communication button. "All ships, this is Captain Kim. Today we show these aliens what humans can do. Remember your families back home. Remember why we fight." Admiral Veltar of the Coalition watched the human ships from his command vessel. His long, gray face showed no emotion. He had conquered 47 worlds in his lifetime. Humans would be number 48. "These creatures think they can fight us," he said to his aide. "Their ships are primitive, their weapons are weak, this will be over quickly." The human fleet moved forward. Do-hyun knew they could not win this battle, but they could show the aliens that humans would not give up easily. Maybe it would make the aliens think twice about attacking Earth. The first shots came from the coalition ships. Bright beams of energy cut through space. 3 human ships exploded immediately, but the humans fought back. Captain Min-soo Park commanded the destroyer Soul's Pride. His ship fired everything it had at the nearest alien vessel. The enemies' shields glowed bright blue as the human weapons hit them. "Keep firing," Min-soo shouted. "Make them remember this day." The battle was fierce. Human ships darted between the larger alien vessels like angry wasps. They used every trick they knew. Some ships pretended to be damaged, then attacked when enemies came close. Others worked in groups, hitting the same target from different sides. Lieutenant Colonel Ji-young-oh piloted her fighter through a storm of alien fire. Her small ship was fast, but one hit would destroy it. She saw a coalition cruiser trying to break through the human line. "Not today," she whispered, and fired 2 missiles at the enemy ship's engines. The coalition had better weapons and stronger shields, but they were surprised by how well the humans fought. These were not the weak creatures they expected. Every human ship fought like it was protecting something precious. Admiral Veltar frowned as he watched the battle. His ships were winning, but they were losing more vessels than expected. The humans were clever fighters. They worked together perfectly, like they had practiced this battle many times. "Sir, we have lost 12 ships," reported his tactical officer. "The humans are better than our intelligence suggested." "It does not matter," Veltar replied. "We still have them outnumbered 3-1. Continue the attack." Captain Do-hyun's ship shook as enemy fire hit the hull. Sparks flew from damaged control panels. Half his crew was dead or wounded, but he kept fighting. "Sir, our weapons are failing," reported Commander Jin-hee-yoon from the engine room. "We can't take much more damage." Do-hyun looked around his bridge. Good people, all of them. They had families waiting at home. Children who would grow up as slaves if the coalition won. "Send a message to all human ships," he ordered. "Tell them it has been an honor to serve with them." The human fleet was dying. One by one, their ships went dark. But they fought until the very end. Every shot they fired was aimed perfectly. Every move they made was calculated to cause maximum damage to the enemy. Captain Taejin Lim's heavy cruiser, Busan Thunder, was the last large human ship still fighting. His weapons were gone, his engines were failing, but he would not surrender. "Ram the command ship," he ordered his helmsman. "If we're going to die, let's take their admiral with us." The damaged human cruiser turned toward Veltar's flagship. The coalition ship fired everything it had, but the Busan Thunder kept coming. At the last second, the human ship exploded, taking 2 alien destroyers with it. Admiral Veltar felt something he had not experienced in years: respect for an enemy. These humans had fought better than many species with superior technology, but they were still dead. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission from the last human ship," his communications officer announced. On the main screen, Captain Do-hyun Kim appeared. His uniform was torn and bloody. Behind him, his bridge was full of smoke and sparks. "Admiral Veltar," Do-hyun said with a calm smile, "I hope you enjoyed our little demonstration." "Your fleet is destroyed, human," Veltar replied. "Surrender now, and your death will be quick." Do-hyun laughed. It was not the laugh of a beaten man. It was the laugh of someone who knew a secret. "This was just our greeting," the human captain said. "What you fought today was our patrol fleet, our scouts, our advance guard. The real defense begins now. Before Veltar could respond, Do-hyun's ship exploded in a bright flash. The admiral stared at the empty space where the human vessel had been. The captain's words echoed in his mind. "Sir, all human ships are destroyed," reported his tactical officer. "We can proceed to Earth." Veltar nodded slowly. The human captain was trying to frighten him. It was a common tactic for losing commanders. They always claimed they had secret weapons or hidden fleets. It never turned out to be true. "Set course for Earth," he ordered. "But stay alert. These humans are more dangerous than we thought." As the coalition fleet moved toward the inner solar system, none of them noticed the small objects floating among the wreckage of the battle. They looked like pieces of destroyed human ships, but they were actually recording devices. Everything that happened in this battle was being transmitted to Earth. On a secret base hidden in the asteroid belt, Captain Minho Park watched the transmission end. He was Do-hyun Kim's younger brother, though the coalition would never know that. Around him, thousands of officers worked at their stations. "The patrol fleet did their job," Minho said quietly. "The aliens think they won. Now we show them what Earth's real military looks like." He turned to his communications officer. "Send the signal to all hidden fleets. Operation Thunder begins now." Throughout the solar system, behind asteroids and inside hollow moons, massive human warships began to power up their engines. The coalition thought they had fought Earth's entire space force. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Admiral Veltar felt confident as his fleet approached Mars. The human homeworld was just ahead. Soon, another species would kneel before the coalition's might. He had no idea that he was flying into the largest trap in galactic history. The real war was about to begin. Admiral Veltar felt pleased as his fleet moved past Mars. The red planet looked empty and dead, just like the intelligence reports said. Soon they would reach Earth and finish what they started. The humans had fought bravely near Jupiter, but now they had no ships left to defend their world. "Sir, we are detecting some unusual energy readings," reported Lieutenant Casmore from the sensor station. "There are small signals coming from various locations throughout the system. Probably just human communication satellites," Veltar replied. "They are trying to coordinate their surrender. How long until we reach Earth?" 6 hours at current speed, Admiral." Behind a large asteroid, Captain Minho Park watched the coalition fleet on his screens. His ship, the Incheon Guardian, was 10 times larger than his brother Do-hyun's vessel had been. Around him, his bridge crew worked quietly, preparing for the battle ahead. "All stealth fields are holding," reported Commander Ji-sung-kwon. "The enemy cannot detect our fleet." Minho nodded. Humanity had learned a lot from the alien refugees who had escaped coalition attacks over the years. Stealth technology was just one of many gifts these desperate survivors had shared with Earth. "How many ships do we have in position?" Minho asked. 3,000 warships in the first wave," replied his tactical officer, Major Hyunju Kim. "Another 5,000 in reserve positions throughout the system. All hidden fleets report ready for combat." 3,000 ships. Veltar thought he had destroyed Earth's entire space force when he killed 200 human vessels. The coalition had no idea what was waiting for them. On Earth, in a massive underground command center, Ji-won Lee watched dozens of screens showing the approaching alien fleet. She was Earth's strategic defense coordinator, the person responsible for protecting humanity's homeworld. "The coalition fleet will enter the engagement zone in 4 hours," she announced to the room full of officers. "All defensive platforms are online. All hidden fleets are in position. Begin final preparations." The command center was 5 miles underground, built into solid rock. Even if the coalition managed to bomb Earth's surface, the command structure would survive. Humanity had learned to think ahead. Colonel Yoonbin Choi looked up from her station. "Ma'am, our deep space sensors are picking up interesting information about the enemy fleet. They're not scanning properly. They think this system is almost empty." Ji-won smiled coldly. "Good. Let them keep thinking that." The coalition had made their biggest mistake when they assumed humanity was like other species they had conquered. Most worlds had small space forces that fought one big battle and then surrendered. Earth had spent 50 years preparing for this. Date Admiral Veltar stood on his bridge, looking at the small blue world ahead of them. Earth looked beautiful and peaceful. It was hard to believe that such a pretty planet was home to creatures who fought so fiercely. "Sir, I'm detecting some unusual readings from the asteroid belt," reported the sensor officer again. "The energy signatures are stronger now. Probably mining equipment or space stations," Veltar said dismissively. "These humans are primitive. They use nuclear power and chemical rockets, nothing to worry about. He had no way of knowing that human technology had advanced far beyond what the Coalition believed. The mining equipment his sensors detected were actually Fortress-class battleships, each one armed with weapons that could destroy his flagship with a single shot. Captain Seojin Choi commanded the heavy battleship, Gwangju's Revenge, from inside a hollowed-out asteroid. Her ship was completely hidden from enemy sensors. Through the rock walls she could see the Coalition fleet approaching. "All weapons charged and ready," reported her weapons officer. "Targeting solutions locked on enemy vessels." "Hold position," Seojin ordered. "Wait for the signal." She had been waiting in this asteroid for 3 years, along with her crew of 800. They had volunteered for this mission, knowing they might never see Earth again. But they would protect their world no matter the cost. The Coalition fleet moved deeper into the solar system. They passed dozens of asteroids, not knowing that each one hid a human warship. They flew by several moons, unaware that massive weapon platforms were built inside them. They were walking into humanity's trap. Dr. Heejin Yoon sat in her laboratory on Earth, watching the battle preparations on her screens. She had been a xenobiologist before the war, studying alien life forms. Now she used that knowledge to help plan humanity's defense. "The Coalition fleet structure suggests they expect no real resistance," she told General Sun-Ho Bay over the communication link. "They're flying in parade formation, not battle formation. They really believe Earth is defenseless." "Perfect," the general replied. "The more confident they are, the bigger the shock will be." Hyejin had spent 20 years studying Coalition tactics by interviewing alien refugees. She knew how their commanders thought. They were arrogant and careless when they believed victory was certain. That arrogance would be their downfall. As the Coalition fleet approached Earth's moon, Admiral Veltar noticed something strange. There were no human ships anywhere, no defensive satellites, no weapons platforms. Even the space stations around Earth looked abandoned. "Sir, this is unusual," said his intelligence officer. "Most species put up some kind of defense around their home world, even if it's just symbolic." "Perhaps the humans are more intelligent than we thought," Veltar replied. "They know they cannot win, so they are not wasting lives in a hopeless battle." But something felt wrong. The human captain's last words kept echoing in his mind. "The real defense begins now." What had he meant? Suddenly, space around the Coalition fleet began to change. What had looked like empty vacuum started to shimmer and twist. Massive objects began to appear, as if they were materializing out of nothing. "Admiral," shouted the sensor officer, "I'm detecting multiple large contacts. They're everywhere." Human warships decloaked all around the Coalition fleet. Ships that dwarfed anything Veltar had ever seen. Weapons platforms the size of cities. Battle stations that looked like small moons. In seconds, the Coalition went from hunters to hunted. Captain Minho Park smiled as his stealth field deactivated. Around him, 3,000 human warships appeared like ghosts becoming solid. The Incheon Guardian was just one of many massive vessels that surrounded the enemy fleet. "This is Captain Park of the Earth Defense Force," he transmitted to the Coalition ships. "You are surrounded and outgunned. Surrender now and you will be treated according to galactic law." Admiral Veltar stared at the screens in shock. Where had all these ships come from? His intelligence said Earth had no major space force. His scouts had found no hidden fleets. How was this possible? "Sir, enemy ships outnumber us 10 to 1, his tactical officer reported with fear in his voice. "Their vessels are much larger than ours. Power readings suggest weapons far beyond what we expected." For the first time in his long career, Admiral Veltar felt afraid. The Coalition had made a terrible mistake. They had attacked a world that was far more powerful than they realized. "Send a message to Coalition High Command," he ordered. "Tell them we need immediate reinforcements. Tell them Earth is not what we thought it was." But it was too late for reinforcements. The human fleet had positioned itself to block all escape routes. The Coalition was trapped in humanity's web, and the spider was about to strike. Jiwan Li watched from her command center as the trap closed around the enemy fleet. 50 years of preparation had led to this moment. The Coalition thought they were conquering Earth. Instead, they had just encountered their first real opponent. "Begin. Operation Thunder," she ordered. The real battle was about to begin. Admiral Veltar's hands shook as he stared at the tactical display. Red dots surrounded his fleet from every direction. Each dot represented a human warship, and there were thousands of them. His own fleet looked tiny in comparison. How did they hide so many ships? he whispered to himself. Commander Seojin Choi brought her battleship out from behind its asteroid hiding place. The Gwangju's Revenge was 3 times longer than any coalition vessel, its hull black as space itself. Around her, dozens of other hidden ships emerged from asteroids throughout the belt. All weapons target the enemy flagship, she ordered. Let's show them what human engineering can do. The coalition had never seen weapons like the ones humanity had built. Instead of energy beams or missiles, the human ships fired something completely different. Space itself seemed to bend and twist around their targets. Lieutenant Cosmore watched in horror as gravity weapons tore through his ship's shields like they were made of paper. Admiral, their weapons are creating gravity fields. Our shields cannot protect against this. Veltar had conquered worlds with technology far beyond Earth's apparent level. But these humans were using science the coalition did not understand. How had a primitive species developed such advanced weapons? Captain Taehoon Lim commanded the heavy cruiser Daegu Storm from a position near Mars. His ship had been hiding behind the red planet's largest moon for 6 months, waiting for this moment. Now he moved into attack position. Take us around their flank, he ordered his helmsman. Hit them where they don't expect it. The coalition fleet tried to turn and face this new threat, but human ships appeared from behind every planet and moon in the solar system. They had been preparing for this battle for decades, turning their entire star system into a fortress. Dr. Hyejin Yoon monitored the battle from her command post on Earth. She had studied coalition tactics for 20 years, learning from alien refugees who had escaped their previous conquests. Now that knowledge was being put to use. The enemy is trying to form a defensive sphere, she reported to General Sun Ho Bei. They want to concentrate their firepower and break through our lines. Let them try, the general replied. Our ships are faster and more maneuverable. We can hit them from angles they cannot defend. The coalition had always won their battles through superior numbers and firepower, but the humans were using completely different tactics. Their ships moved like a pack of wolves, striking quickly, and then disappearing before the enemy could respond. Admiral Veltar tried to make sense of what was happening. His sensors showed human ships everywhere, but half of them seemed to vanish and reappear in different locations. Were they using some kind of teleportation technology? Sir, the enemy ships are not teleporting, explained his science officer. They are using advanced stealth systems. They can become invisible while moving at full speed. This was impossible. The coalition's own stealth technology only worked when ships were standing still. How had humans developed something so advanced? Commander, Jisung Kwan piloted his destroyer Soul's Hammer through the enemy formation at incredible speed. His ship appeared, fired its gravity weapons at a coalition cruiser, then vanished again before return fire could hit him. This is too easy, he told his weapons officer. Their ships are too slow to track us. The human ships had been designed specifically to fight the coalition. Every piece of technology, every weapons system, every defense had been created with one goal in mind: defeating this enemy. Earth had spent 50 years preparing for this exact battle. Captain Young-Soo Kim commanded the science vessel, Busan Explorer, but his ship was far from defenseless. Hidden inside what looked like a research platform were some of humanity's most powerful weapons. The coalition had no idea that human civilian ships were actually warships in disguise. Deploy the quantum disruptors, he ordered. Target their command ship's communication array. Strange blue energy reached across space and touched Admiral Veltar's flagship. Suddenly, all communication with his fleet was cut off. He could see his other ships, but he could not talk to them or coordinate their movements. What did they do? Veltar demanded. Unknown, sir, replied his communications officer. Our systems are not damaged, but we cannot send or receive any signals. It's as if space itself is blocking our transmissions. The coalition fleet began to fall apart, without coordination. Individual captains made their own decisions, and those decisions were often wrong. The human ships took advantage of every mistake, striking with precision and then vanishing back into the darkness. Jiwan Li watched the battle from her underground command center with satisfaction. Everything was going according to plan. The coalition thought they were fighting Earth's entire military, but this was still just the beginning. Bring in the second wave, she ordered. New contacts appeared on the tactical displays as more human ships decloaked throughout the solar system. These vessels were even larger than the first wave, massive battleships that made the coalition's dreadnoughts look like toys. Admiral Yoon Hee Han commanded the super battleship Incheon's Pride from a hidden base behind Jupiter's largest moon. Her ship was the size of a small city, armed with weapons that could crack planets. She had been waiting patiently for the right moment to join the battle. "All ships, this is Admiral Han," she transmitted to the human fleet. "Begin the final phase of Operation Thunder." The remaining coalition ships tried desperately to escape, but they found human vessels blocking every path out of the solar system. Captain Min-Soo Park's destroyer group had positioned itself near Saturn, cutting off the most likely escape route. "Sir, enemy ships are trying to break through our lines," reported his tactical officer. "Let them try," Min-Soo replied with a cold smile. "Show them what happens when they threaten our home." The fleeing coalition ships ran straight into humanity's trap. Hidden weapon platforms throughout Saturn's rings opened fire with devastating effect. The beautiful ice crystals that surrounded the planet lit up with explosions as enemy ships died. Admiral Veltar realized with growing horror that his entire invasion had been a mistake. Earth was not a primitive world with weak defenses. It was a military powerhouse that had been pretending to be helpless. The humans had let the coalition attack so they could destroy the entire invasion fleet. "Sir, we have lost 60% of our ships," his tactical officer reported. "The survivors are scattered and cannot regroup." "Send a surrender signal," Veltar ordered quietly. "Sir? You heard me. Send a surrender signal to the human fleet. We cannot win this battle." It was the first time in coalition history that one of their fleets had ever surrendered to an enemy. But Admiral Veltar was a practical officer. He knew when he was beaten. Captain Min-Ho Park received the surrender transmission on his bridge. Around him, his officers looked surprised. They had expected the aliens to fight to the death like most coalition forces did. "Sir, what are your orders?" asked his second-in-command. Min-Ho thought about his brother Do-hyun, who had died in the first battle. He thought about all the species the coalition had destroyed over the centuries. He thought about the millions of beings who had died because of these aliens' cruelty. "Accept their surrender," he said finally. "But keep all weapons trained on their ships. If they try anything, destroy them immediately." The battle was over, but the war was just beginning. Earth had revealed its true strength to the galaxy. Now everyone would know that humanity was not a species to be conquered. They were the ones who would do the conquering. Admiral Veltar sat in his command chair, staring at the human ships that surrounded his fleet. He had started this day as a conqueror. Now he was a prisoner. The coalition would not be pleased. But that was the least of his worries. Something told him that Earth's victory here was just the first step in a much larger plan. The humans had been preparing for this war for decades. They probably had plans for what came next, too. He was right to be worried. In her command center, Ji-Won Lee was already issuing orders for the next phase of humanity's strategy. The coalition had attacked Earth thinking they were destroying a weak species. Instead, they had awakened something much more dangerous. The real war was about to begin. In the coalition prison ship Dark Victory, Admiral Veltar sat in his small cell, thinking about how everything had gone wrong. Through the small window, he could see human warships patrolling outside. They moved with precision and purpose, like they had been planning this moment for years. A human officer entered his cell. She was tall and wore a uniform Veltar did not recognize. Her name tag read, Colonel Mirai Shin. "Admiral Veltar," she said in perfect coalition language. "I have some questions for you." "I will tell you nothing," Veltar replied. "The coalition code forbids—" "The coalition code?" Mirai laughed coldly. "The same code that says you should exterminate entire species. We know all about your code, Admiral. We have been studying it for 50 years. Veltar stared at her in confusion. 50 years, that is impossible. Your species only discovered space travel 30 years ago. Mirai sat down across from him. That is what we wanted you to think. The truth is very different. She activated a holographic display that showed star maps and battle reports. 87 years ago, the coalition attacked the Kethri homeworld. You remember them, don't you? Peaceful traders who never hurt anyone. Veltar remembered. Kethri had been one of his first conquests as a young officer. Their ships were slow and their weapons were weak. The battle had lasted less than an hour. You thought you killed them all, Mirai continued. But some escaped. A few dozen ships fled to the edge of the galaxy. They found a small primitive world called Earth. The hologram showed refugee ships landing on a blue planet. Veltar recognized the design of the vessels. They were indeed Kethri ships. The Kethri told us about the coalition, Mirai explained. They warned us that you would come for us eventually, so we began to prepare. Over the following decades, more refugee ships had arrived at Earth. Survivors from the Zephyrian Empire, escaped slaves from the Torgan mining colonies. the last scientists from the Velnari research stations. Each group brought knowledge and technology with them. Every species you destroyed had survivors, Mirai said. They all came to Earth. They all helped us prepare for this day. Veltar felt sick. The Coalition had thought they were attacking a primitive human world. Instead, they had attacked a planet protected by the combined knowledge of dozens of advanced civilizations. Meanwhile, far beyond Earth's solar system, Captain Taehoon Lim commanded a massive battle group that had been hidden in deep space for over a decade. His ships were stationed near the Coalition supply depot at Kepler Station, waiting for the signal to attack. "Sir, we just received the coded transmission from Earth," reported his communications officer, Lieutenant Soyoung Park. "Operation Thunder was successful. We are cleared to begin Phase 2. Taehoon smiled grimly. Phase 2 was the part he had been waiting for. Earth's victory in the solar system was just the beginning. Now they would take the war to the Coalition's territory. "All ships, this is Captain Lim," he transmitted to his fleet. "Begin attack on Kepler Station. Show no mercy." The Coalition supply depot never saw them coming. One moment space was empty, the next it was full of human warships appearing out of stealth. The station's defenses designed to stop pirate raids were completely overwhelmed. Station Commander Vortak sent desperate messages for help as human marines boarded his facility, but his calls went unanswered. Every Coalition fleet in the sector was dealing with their own problems. Dr. Young-Soo Kim had been a physicist on Earth before the war, but now he commanded the science vessel Daegu's Hope in the Outer Rim territories. His ship looked harmless, like a research platform studying distant stars, but hidden inside its hull were weapons that could destroy entire planets. "Sir, we have located the Coalition's main fleet base at Rigel 7, reported his sensor officer. Intelligence was correct. It's heavily defended. Young-Soo studied the tactical display. Rigel 7 was one of the Coalition's most important military centers. Destroying it would cripple their ability to launch new invasions. "Begin quantum destabilization of their defensive grid," he ordered. "Let's see how well their shields work when the laws of physics stop functioning properly." The human ships fired weapons that the Coalition had never encountered before. Instead of trying to break through enemy shields with brute force, these weapons changed the fundamental properties of matter and energy. Coalition defenses simply stopped working. Back on Earth, Ji-Won Lee coordinated the attacks happening throughout the galaxy. In her command center, dozens of screens showed human fleets engaging Coalition forces in star systems hundreds of light years apart. "Report from the Vega sector," announced her aide, Major Hyunwoo Na. "Captain Song's task force has liberated 3 slave worlds. The freed populations are joining our fleet." "Excellent," Ji-Won replied. "What about the Centauri operation?" "Admiral, base forces have destroyed the Coalition's main shipyard there. They captured over 100 enemy vessels intact. This was humanity's true plan. They were not just defending Earth. They were dismantling the entire Coalition empire, piece by piece. Every attack was coordinated. Every target was chosen carefully. Captain Gina Song commanded the liberation fleet that was freeing Coalition slave worlds. Her ships carried not just weapons, but supplies and medical aid for the billions of beings the Coalition had enslaved. "Sir, we are approaching the Altair mining colonies," reported her navigation officer. "Long-range scans show approximately 2 million slaves working in the facilities." Gina had seen Coalition slave operations before. The conditions were always horrible. Beings from dozens of species forced to work until they died, then replaced by new captives from the latest conquered worlds. "All ships prepare for combat," she ordered. "But remember, our primary goal is to save lives, not take them. Target the guard towers and control centers. Avoid hitting the slave quarters." The human fleet attacked with surgical precision. They disabled the Coalition guards without harming the prisoners. Within hours, 2 million slaves were free for the first time in years. But the freed slaves did not return to their destroyed homeworlds. Instead, they joined the human fleet. Earth had offered them something the Coalition never expected, a chance for revenge. Admiral Veltar was brought to Earth for interrogation. As his transport ship approached the blue planet, he was shocked by what he saw. Massive orbital shipyards surrounded the world, building warships at an incredible rate. This was not the primitive planet his intelligence had described. Colonel Mirai Shin escorted him to the surface. As they walked through the corridors of the human military headquarters, Veltar saw something that made his blood run cold. The walls were covered with portraits of alien beings wearing human military uniforms. "Those are our allied commanders," Mirai explained. noticing his stare. "Survivors from the worlds you destroyed. They have been planning this war longer than you can imagine." In one portrait, Veltar recognized a Kethri female wearing the insignia of a human admiral. In another, a Zephyrian male with the rank of general. These were species the Coalition had thought extinct, now serving as Earth's military leaders. "How many?" Veltar asked quietly. "How many what?" "How many species survived your attacks? How many are fighting for Earth now?" Mireille smiled coldly. "All of them, Admiral. Every single species you thought you had destroyed. They all had survivors, and they all came to us. The Coalition created its own enemies. Commander Hyunwoo Na was leading a strike force to attack the Coalition's communication hub at Wolf 359. If they could destroy this facility, Coalition fleets throughout the galaxy would lose contact with their high command. "Sir, enemy defenses are heavier than expected," reported his tactical officer. "They have 3 battle groups protecting the station." "No matter," Hyunwoo replied. "Deploy the Zephyrian gravity mines. Let's see how they handle weapons from Assam," species they thought was extinct. The mines were a gift from Zephyrian refugees who had escaped the Coalition's attack on their homeworld decades ago. They created localized gravity fields that crushed enemy ships from the inside out. The Coalition had never seen anything like them. As human fleets attacked Coalition targets throughout the galaxy, a disturbing pattern became clear. Earth was not just winning individual battles. They were fighting a coordinated campaign that stretched across hundreds of star systems simultaneously. Admiral Veltar finally understood the terrible truth as he sat in his cell on Earth. The humans had not just defeated his invasion fleet. They had been planning a galactic war for half a century, using knowledge from every species the Coalition had ever attacked. The Coalition thought they were the galaxy's ultimate predators, but Earth had revealed the truth. They were just another species that would fall before humanity's alliance of survivors. The hunters had become the hunted, and there would be no escape. Outside his window, Veltar could see more human warships, launching from the orbital shipyards. Each one carried weapons designed by extinct civilizations and crewed by beings the Coalition thought they had killed. The real war had begun, and the Coalition was already losing. General Sunho Bay stood in the main tactical center of the enormous human battleship, Korea's Vengeance, watching display screens that showed Coalition territory throughout the entire galaxy. Red symbols marked enemy strongholds and military bases, while blue symbols showed human fleets moving to attack them. The strategic map looked like a giant spider's web slowly closing around trapped prey. "Sir, all task forces are reporting ready for coordinated attack," announced his aide, Commander Jisoo Kwan. "We have battle fleets positioned to strike 52 Coalition worlds at exactly the same time." Sunho nodded with grim determination. This was the moment humanity had been carefully preparing for since the very first alien refugee ships had arrived at Earth many decades ago. The Coalition believed they were the galaxy's most powerful predators, but they were about to discover what real predators actually looked like. "Begin Operation Judgment immediately," he ordered in a calm, steady voice. Throughout Coalition space, human fleets that had been hiding in the darkness for years suddenly revealed themselves without warning. The aliens found themselves under devastating attack from military forces they never knew existed, using advanced weapons they could not understand or defend against effectively. Captain Gina Song led the massive assault on the heavily fortified Coalition fortress world of Zerion Prime. Her liberation fleet had grown to over 800 ships as more and more freed slaves joined her righteous cause. Former prisoners who had suffered terribly under Coalition rule now served as her most dedicated and fierce warriors. "Sir, the enemy commander is requesting emergency reinforcements from their main battle fleet," reported her communications officer, Lieutenant Daeho Kim. "Should we interfere with their distress signals?" "No. Let them call for all the help they want," Gina replied with a cold, dangerous smile. "When their reinforcements finally arrive here, we will destroy them too." The Coalition's military strategy had always been very simple. Use overwhelming force against much weaker enemies who could not fight back effectively. They had never faced an opponent who could match their numbers and completely exceed their technology. All their standard battle tactics were completely useless against humanity's powerful alliance. Admiral Veltar sat in his prison cell on Earth, listening to constant reports of Coalition defeats throughout the galaxy. Each new transmission brought terrible news of another lost world, another destroyed fleet, another military disaster. The mighty empire he had served his entire adult life was collapsing piece by piece. Colonel Mirai Shin visited him regularly, bringing detailed updates on the war's steady progress. Your home world of Kolar 7 is now under complete siege, she informed him during one visit. Your own son commands the main defense fleet there. Veltar felt his heart sink with despair. His son Kreltar was an excellent officer, but he had been trained only to fight weak enemies, not the technological nightmare that Earth had become with help from dozens of refugee species. Please, I beg you, he said quietly. My son is not responsible for the Coalition's crimes against innocent beings. He was born into this system, just as I was many years ago. Mireille studied him carefully for a long moment. Then perhaps you should send him a personal message. Tell him to surrender his forces before he shares your fate as a prisoner. Meanwhile, on the Coalition capital world of Dominion, Supreme Commander Thexral faced the worst crisis in his species' entire history. Every single day brought fresh news of new defeats, lost worlds, and destroyed fleets. The humans were not just winning battles, they were systematically dismantling the Coalition's entire galactic empire. How is any of this possible? He demanded, angrily of his intelligence chief. All our reports clearly said Earth was a primitive world with no significant military capabilities whatsoever. General Morvak's face was pale with terror and confusion. Our intelligence was completely wrong, Supreme Commander. The humans have been secretly planning this war for many decades. They have powerful allies we never knew existed, advanced technology we cannot match, and hidden fleets positioned throughout the entire galaxy. Then we must fight even harder than before. Thexral roared in fury. Mobilize every single ship we have, conscript every able-bodied being, burn every world to ashes rather than let the humans capture it. But his desperate orders fell on deaf ears throughout Coalition space. Military commanders everywhere were too busy trying to save their own forces to worry about grand strategies from the capital. The Empire was rapidly fragmenting as individual worlds and fleets made separate peace agreements with the advancing human forces. Captain Tehun Lim's Deep Space Battle Group had been hunting Coalition supply convoys for many months, systematically cutting off reinforcements and supplies to their embattled worlds. His ships moved like deadly ghosts through unexplored regions of space, appearing only long enough to destroy enemy vessels before vanishing again into the darkness. Sir, we have successfully located a major Coalition fleet moving toward the Rigel system, reported his scout commander, Major Soman Lee. Intelligence analysis suggests they are carrying reinforcements for the siege of Rigel 7. How many ships are we talking about? Tehun asked with interest. Over 300 vessels, including their newest and most powerful Dreadnought-class battleships. Tehun smiled with satisfaction. The Coalition was sending their very best ships to relieve one of their most strategically important worlds. It was the perfect opportunity to deal them a crippling blow that would echo throughout the galaxy. Set course to intercept immediately, he ordered. Contact Admiral Han's main task force. Tell her we have found a target that is worthy of her personal attention. Admiral Yunhee Han commanded the largest human battle fleet anywhere in space, a massive armada of over 1,500 warships that had been carefully hidden beyond the galactic rim for many years. Her flagship, the enormous Soul's Might, was the size of a small moon and carried weapons powerful enough to destroy entire star systems. Admiral, we have received Captain Lim's urgent message, reported her tactical officer Colonel Jehoon Park. The Coalition relief fleet will pass through the Deneb system in exactly 68 hours. Perfect timing, Yunhee replied with cold satisfaction. We will be waiting there for them. The Deneb system was mostly empty space, far from any inhabited worlds or important installations. It was the perfect location for a major battle where humanity could use their most devastating weapons without worrying about causing harm to innocent civilian populations. Dr. Young-Soo Kim's science vessel had been extensively modified with experimental weapons that actually violated several known laws of physics. His ship could create localized time distortion fields, making enemy vessels age centuries within seconds. It could manipulate gravity to turn nearby stars into weapons of mass destruction. It could even tear holes in the fabric of space itself. Sir, the Coalition relief fleet has just entered the Deneb system, announced his sensor officer Lieutenant Minkyung-yu. They are proceeding at maximum speed toward the hyperspace jump point. Activate the temporal mines throughout the area, Young-Soo ordered calmly. Let's demonstrate to them what happens when you interfere with the flow of causality. The Coalition fleet never understood what was happening to them. One moment they were flying safely through what appeared to be empty space. The next moment, their ships were rapidly aging and falling apart around them. Hull metal became brittle and cracked apart, electronic systems failed as their components decayed, and crew members found themselves aging many years within just a few seconds. Supreme, Commander Thexeral received the devastating news of the Deneb massacre with growing desperation and panic. His relief fleet, the largest military force the Coalition had assembled in many decades, had been completely destroyed without inflicting even a single casualty on the human enemy. "We need to start negotiations immediately," advised his diplomatic minister, Yextal. "Perhaps we can reach some kind of reasonable agreement with the human leaders." "Never." Thexeral slammed his fist down on the conference table. "The Coalition does not negotiate with inferior species under any circumstances." But even as he spoke those proud words, he knew deep in his heart that his empire was doomed to destruction. The humans were definitely not an inferior species. They were something far more dangerous. A species that had learned valuable lessons from every single mistake the Coalition had made over many centuries of brutal conquest. Captain Gina Song's liberation fleets had successfully freed over 90 slave worlds throughout Coalition space, and each glorious victory brought thousands of new allies to humanity's growing cause. Former Coalition prisoners, beings from dozens of different species, now served aboard human ships with a burning desire for revenge against their former oppressors. "Sir, we are now approaching the massive Vega colony complex," reported her second-in-command, Commander Hyejin Yoon. "Intelligence reports indicate over 15 million slaves are working in the mining and manufacturing operations there. Then, today we free 15 million more allies for our cause," Gina replied with determination. "All ships begin the liberation assault." But as the human forces approached Vega, they discovered something that made them pause with concern. The Coalition had placed powerful explosive devices throughout all the slave quarters and work areas. 8 months after the Great Battle of Earth, the Coalition's capital world of Dominion burned in the distance as massive human ships approached its orbital defense stations. Supreme Commander Thexeral had fled 4 days earlier with his personal guard, leaving behind a government in complete chaos and a military that no longer existed as any kind of organized fighting force. Admiral Jisoo Quan commanded the human fleet that now surrounded the planet in perfect formation. Her orders from Earth Command were very clear: capture all Coalition leadership alive if possible, and preserve as much of the planetary infrastructure as they could. This world would become an important symbol of the new galaxy that humanity was building from the ashes of the old empire. "Sir, we are receiving surrender signals from all remaining Coalition ships in orbit," reported her tactical officer, Major Sunwoo Kim. "They are requesting terms for their capitulation." "Tell them there is only one acceptable term," Jisoo replied in a firm voice. "Complete and unconditional surrender, followed by full cooperation with war crimes tribunals. Anyone who refuses this offer will be treated as a hostile combatant." The Coalition's centuries-long reign of terror and oppression was finally over. In just 8 months, humanity's growing alliance had liberated hundreds of worlds, freed billions of enslaved beings, and completely destroyed the military might of an empire that had ruled the galaxy through fear for over 600 years. On Earth, President Kyungmin-oh prepared to address the entire galaxy for the first time as the elected leader of the new Galactic Defense Alliance. Representatives from over 300 different species had gathered in the massive orbital conference station above Earth. Many of them were survivors of Coalition attacks, while others were beings who had lived their entire lives in fear of conquest and enslavement. "Citizens of the galaxy," President O began, his words being carefully translated into hundreds of different languages. "Today marks the end of a long era of darkness and the beginning of something completely new. No longer will powerful species prey upon the weak and defenseless. No longer will any beings have to live in constant fear of conquest, slavery, or extermination." In the enormous assembly hall, alien representatives from across the galaxy listened with hope, wonder, and amazement. They had never imagined that such words could be spoken with real authority and genuine meaning behind them. But humanity had clearly proved both their strength and their commitment to justice for all. Chief Justice Mirai Shin presided over the War Crimes Tribunal on the newly liberated world of Haven Prime. Former Coalition leaders sat in the defendants section, facing serious charges of genocide, systematic slavery, and countless crimes against all sentient life. The evidence against them was completely overwhelming and undeniable. Admiral Veltar was among the defendants, though he had cooperated fully with human authorities from the beginning. His detailed testimony had helped identify many other war criminals and locate dozens of hidden Coalition strongholds throughout the galaxy. "Admiral Veltar," Justice Mirai addressed him directly, "you personally commanded fleets that destroyed 23 worlds and enslaved 57 different species. How do you answer to these terrible charges?" Veltar stood slowly and carefully, He looked much older than his actual years, worn down by the enormous weight of his crimes and the complete collapse of everything he had once believed in. "Guilty, of all charges," he said simply and clearly. "I followed orders that I knew were morally wrong. I participated in atrocities that can never be forgiven or forgotten. I accept full responsibility for all my actions." The packed courtroom fell completely silent. Many of the observers were survivors of worlds that Veltar had personally attacked. They had expected defiance and excuses, not this honest admission of guilt and remorse. However, Veltar continued in a stronger voice. "I wish to make an important statement to the entire galaxy. The Coalition taught us that might makes right, that the strong have the natural right to dominate and oppress the weak. We were completely wrong about everything. Humanity has shown all of us a much better way to live." Justice Mirai nodded with approval. "Your cooperation and genuine remorse will certainly be taken into account during sentencing. But justice must still be served for the countless innocent beings who died because of your actions." Meanwhile, throughout former Coalition space, human administrators and volunteers worked tirelessly to rebuild civilizations that had been destroyed or enslaved over many centuries. Captain Gina Song had been appointed as the Chief Liberation Coordinator for all the former Coalition slave worlds, overseeing the massive and complex task of restoring freedom to billions of oppressed beings. "Sir, the situation on Kepler 9 has finally stabilized," reported her aide, Commander Minji Lee. "The freed slaves have successfully formed a provisional government and are formally requesting membership in the Galactic Defense Alliance." "Request approved immediately," Gina replied without hesitation. "What about the complicated Zarian system?" "Still very difficult. 4 different species were enslaved there for decades, and they cannot agree on how to govern the planets fairly. They are requesting human mediation to resolve the disputes." This was the greatest challenge of building a completely new galactic order. It was not enough to simply destroy the old evil system. Humanity had to help create something much better in its place. Fortunately, they had been preparing for this enormous responsibility, just as long as they had been preparing for war. Dr. Hejin Yoon, now serving as Earth's chief xenological advisor, worked closely with alien representatives to establish new laws that would govern peaceful relations between all species. The old Coalition legal code had been built entirely on domination and brutal exploitation. The new galactic charter would be based on cooperation, mutual respect, and equal justice for all beings. "The most important question before us," she addressed the Constitutional Convention, "is how to prevent another coalition from ever arising again. How do we protect peaceful species without creating a new form of tyranny or oppression?" The answer came from an unexpected source. The original, alien refugees who had first warned Earth about the Coalition many decades earlier. They proposed a comprehensive system of mutual defense pacts, where any unprovoked attack on one member species would be automatically considered an attack on all member species. General Sun Ho Bei personally oversaw the construction of the new Galactic Defense Force headquarters on the former Coalition world of Unity Prime. The planet had once been a center of oppression, military planning, and the coordination of genocidal campaigns. Now it would become a powerful symbol of protection, peace, and justice for all. "Sir, the first graduating class of multi-species officers has successfully completed their advanced training," reported Colonel Yunbin Choi with obvious pride. "They represent 63 different worlds and 29 distinct species." Sunho smiled warmly as he watched the graduation ceremony from his office window. Human officers stood alongside beings from across the entire galaxy, all wearing the same uniform and swearing the same sacred oath, to protect all innocent life and defend freedom wherever it might be threatened. The new Galactic Defense Force was definitely not an army of conquest like the Coalition military had been for centuries. It was a peacekeeping organization dedicated to preventing future genocides and protecting developing civilizations from exploitation by more advanced species. Captain Taehoon Lim commanded one of the first truly integrated starships in the new Galactic Fleet. His crew included humans, former Coalition citizens who had completely renounced their old allegiance, freed slaves from dozens of worlds, and representatives from many species that had been liberated during the war. "Sir, we are receiving an urgent distress call from the Andromeda Frontier region," announced his communications officer, a Kethri named Velshran, whose people had been among the very first refugees to reach Earth decades ago. "Pirates are attacking a peaceful colony of Zephyrian survivors." "Set course for their location immediately," Taehoon ordered without hesitation. "Maximum possible speed." This was what the new galaxy looked like in practice. Former enemies working together harmoniously to protect beings they had never met, simply because it was the right thing to do. The old coalition of fear and oppression had been permanently replaced by a true alliance of hope and mutual aid. On Earth, in the same underground command center where Jiwan Li had once coordinated humanity's desperate defense, a new generation of officers now monitored galactic peace around the clock. Warning systems that had once watched fearfully for coalition attacks now looked constantly for signs of piracy, slavery, or other threats to innocent beings anywhere in the galaxy. "Ma'am, we have reports of unusual military activity in the outer Rim territories," announced Lieutenant Hyunwoo Na. "It might be remnants of coalition forces trying to regroup and reorganize." Commander Jiwan Li, now serving as Earth's Director of Galactic Security, studied the intelligence reports very carefully. "Dispatch Patrol Group 12 to investigate immediately. If there are coalition holdouts still operating out there, we need to deal with them before they can threaten anyone else. The official war against the